I want to know more about the Cougars because there has been a coaching change. I want to go back before we talk about what's going on right now. With Holgorsen, where was the program? Where did the powers that be feel like he was falling short?
Well, the program was in bad shape, and you look at if you rewind just back a couple of years, they're in the American Athletic Conference Championship game against Cincinnati. That's the year Cincinnati went undefeated and made the playoffs, or I mean, not, they were in the playoff running, and first group of 5 teams and all that stuff. But you fast forward after that nice 12-win season by Houston, and it just things fell apart. And where and at the same time he got an extension after that, so you're on the hook for about $15 million, and he has a couple of bad seasons after that, and they make a change, and they have to go a different direction. But his Dana's probably the things that the blows that led to the end for him. He went on his radio show and talked about the lack of recruiting success that the ship had sailed on the recruiting classes for this past year, and just didn't show any motivation to want to go out and do the development part. And then he goes to one of the national websites and says there's no bleeping way that he gets fired because he's got this impossible buyout, and there's no way that they'll pay it. Well, they ended up paying it. And then you couple that with a really bad first season in the Big 12 and nobody attending games. It was a costly but necessary decision that they made to part ways.
I'm aware of who Willie Fritz is, but for the audience, who is he and how is he advanced at this age? 64 is, pretty old, pretty far down the line to get your first big job, but his path has been really interesting, man. He's coached.
Yeah, this is a guy who, you mentioned his age. It's his first Power 4 job. He started, he's been, Central Missouri. We started at Blinn College. He won 2 national championships, JUCO championships. Had a guy named Michael Bishop as his quarterback, the guy that went and played for Kansas State and had a really successful career in college. Then he goes to places like Central Missouri. He's at Sam Houston, plays for 2 FCS championships there, and loses both times to North Dakota State. Goes to Georgia Southern, and then the last 8 years, he went and turned around a Tulane program, and that's a tough thing to do based on their academics and the size of the school, and they were competing in the American Athletic, but he goes in there and has that great comeback against USC in the Cotton Bowl a couple of years ago, and wins a couple of championships in the American, and he's there. And you look at where you guys are, and UNLV. The finalists for that. Barry Odom was someone that Houston really looked at. They were intrigued by him. I was just told as recent as a week ago that if Willie Fritz had fallen through, they were gonna turn to a Barry Odom as a potential successor to Dana Holgorsen. So, it's going to be interesting that those two coaches are going to match up in week 1. But for Willie Fritz, it will be the culmination of a long 30-year journey to get to a major college conference. And, the word around Houston and that program is he's bringing stability. And it's something that hasn't been able to be said in several years for the Cougars.
Joseph, let's talk about the roster, and let's start at the QB position. Donovan Smith, we're pretty familiar with him. Vegas guy, played here at Gorman, but not at the quarterback position. Went to Tech, switched over to Houston last year so he could start full-time as the quarterback. Not a bad year for him at all. What do you expect to see out of him this upcoming year?
Well, he's coming off of a shoulder surgery this past offseason. He got hurt maybe the next to last game of the year and played through it, but he didn't go through spring. He's been cleared, and he went to the Manning camp about a month ago and was airing the ball, so they feel real comfortable about that. And people that I talk to think that this is a guy that, you look at the Big 12 and the quarterbacks that are in it, he's not among the higher rated QBs, but they feel like he has the talent and the intangibles to go out and have a really successful year. He needs to work on decision making, but he's got the size, he's got the package, the total package there. And Texas Tech, he was just a victim there of a crowded quarterback room, and he just needed to go somewhere else. And it will be interesting to see how they use that position in this offense for Houston, because Willie Fritz likes to run the ball. And but I think you're going to see a really good balance, because they know what they have with Donovan Smith, and with 1 year here left, they want to give everything they can out of him.
Give us a couple skill position players that we should really keep our eye out on.
At running back, Parker Jenkins. He was a freshman last year, really came through. I think he had about 500 yards. So I mean, they think that they could have another big year in store for him. And then you look at wide receiver, Joseph Manjack IV. Really, he's a utility man type guy. You can play him outside, you can play him inside. Does a lot of things, and they need him to step up, because their biggest receiver, actually their top two, transferred out. Sam Brown ended up leaving, and then Matthew Golden went down the road to Texas. So between the two skill positions, Joseph Manjack and Parker Jenkins, those are the guys I think that could really be players to watch on offense.
Joseph Duarte helping us out with a Houston Cougar preview, week 1 of the season for the Rebels here at UNLV, August 31st. We're going to be playing a game in H-Town. So back to the change at head coach and the future of Cougar football. It's interesting, and I don't want to out the guy, but we had someone who I guess talks a lot of Houston football on local radio there. And one, it's very interesting that you said Barry Odom was in the mix, because when I asked him about Barry Odom, he was like, I basically didn't even know who he was. But the other thing I thought was really intriguing that he mentioned was, and it turned out he was a Holgorsen loyalist. It turns out, I think he's wrong on this. You tell me. He kept saying that Houston doesn't have the money behind the program. They don't have the facilities to compete. Do you believe that?
No. In fact, the decade before they got into the Big 12, they invested just across the board about $300-400 million in facility. And so the quote was, they had to fake it till they make it. And, they were sort of trying to align themselves to get in. They've got a football stadium that's just 10 years old, and it's 40,000 seats, and it's a long way from what they previously had. They have an indoor practice facility that really is top level here in Texas, and you got to have that because of the weather and the heat. And then they're about to open next summer a $140 million football operations center. So just those three things alone, that's power for quality. Now, what they may have been alluding to budget-wise, the department as a whole, they don't generate the type of revenue that they need to. They're probably at about a $95 million budget right now, and that's heavily subsidized. Probably 55 or more % of that money comes directly from the university. So they're being heavily funded and subsidized, and that's not the way to go, but they've had to do that just because they wanted to get into a power conference. So maybe that's what they were alluding to, but from the facility standpoint, absolutely not. This is a program that, if you look at it and just go back, 5 to 10 years, it's night and day.
Win total for the Cougars this year, over under 4.5. Actually 4.
Under.
Yeah. Under?
Under.
Okay.
Yes. Tough schedule. They got Oklahoma in week 2. UNLV is a tough one. I mean, they almost lost. Well, they did lose the Rice last year, so those are 3 non-conference. Then you get Utah. You go Kansas on the road. It's going to be tough. And nobody thinks that this is going to be a 1-year turnaround for Willie Fritz. It's going to take some time. It's just what he inherited. But the portal helped. They went out and they've done a lot of big things in recruiting so far, just looking ahead. So they might win a game here and there that no one expects them to. But this is not in my opinion, a bowl team in year 1, and it's going to take some time to get all the pieces in order.
Upside of this, in 3 years, can they fill that stadium?
What's that?
Upside, say 3 years from now, can they fill the football stadium at Houston?
Well, this is a big city, and there's a lot of stuff with the NFL, the Major League Baseball, NBA. It's tough. And I remember in 15 when they were 10-0 and in the college football playoff hunt, they were never selling this place out. So I don't know if that's possible, but I think that ultimately, if you're in a 40,000 seat, if they're not drawing 35 to 36,000 in the Big 12, then there's something wrong. But it's just that it hasn't been a sellout kind of program for many, many decades. So I wouldn't even know what that looks like, to be honest with you, if it were to happen in 3 years. I don't see it. They've got some issues that they know they got to work through just as an athletic department. But yeah, butts in the seat is probably, if it's not priority one, it's certainly priority two on the list right now.